Good evening and happy Monday to you beautiful people. Welcome to TCB Studios and welcome to Burn It Down. I got into this a little bit last Monday evening. Want to touch on it a little bit more tonight, and every week we will mention it in September. September is Suicide Prevention Month. And I'm very proud to say that we here at TCB Studios are partnering with Cosmos Creative and SDF to talk about this. Let people know that you are loved and you are appreciated, and that there are hotlines to talk to people, 1-800-273-TALK. We're going to be doing shows. We're going to be having actual panels throughout the month of September on Cosmos, talking about this, things that you can do. And also just let people know we are here for you. We are here for you even at Burn It Down. If you need anything and you need a listening ear, please reach out to us, because we really, since we started this thing from day one, I've talked to Renee. Shout out to Renee behind the scenes. We feel it's a community and a family. And I'm super proud to be part of it. I want to give a big shout out to MM as well, and everyone else behind the scenes. And we're running a few minutes behind this evening. Apologize about that. We had some technical difficulties, but you know what they say in the business: the show must go on. So I'm sorry we're running a few minutes behind, but that's okay. We are going to get into it. We're going to burn it down with a gentleman by the name of Matt Geenia, producer, musician, storyteller, curator, wonderful podcast, record label owner. There's so many things that even as I get to know him and work with him, I just find out more and more about him. So let's just bring him on, because we've been doing some interesting stuff lately, and I have a feeling we are only going to do more. So, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Matt Geenia.
Hey, what's up, man?
How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine, man. I'm just over here off of Ponce by the Plaza Theater and the Righteous Room.
Yes, Righteous Room represent. I've spent many afternoons there. I've spent a few evenings there, and I think I've even spent a couple of mornings there. Shout out to Pat and Jed and everyone over there. I think we were trying to do an interview there at one point, but it might just be a little bit too loud.
Yo, I understand. It is. That's why I had to go out in the car. That's fine, though.
Well, you look beautiful on this Monday night. Thank you so much for being on the show. I've been on your podcast before. Mm-hmm. So you do things under the name Group Hugs and Dude Hugs. Can you please tell some of the listeners and the viewers at Burn It Down about both of these things?
Sure. Well, it's kind of fun because I love irony for whatever reason. So I think when I first landed in the Atlanta scene, I'm not going to say I was like an antisocial person, but I certainly wasn't much of a socialite. It felt very unusual to me to like go out and try to make friends at bars and stuff. And going out and performing publicly was like interesting. I'd been doing it since I was a child, but I don't think I liked it until about 20 years ago. But for the first several times I came out to Atlanta, I was the kind of person who like didn't like people to touch me. I didn't like it when people shook my hand or hugged me, and it kind of made me want to take a shower, you know? Right. And so that's one of the reasons why Dude Hugs made the list of things I was thinking about calling this deal. And I had a lot of ideas for them, but some of them were taken. Like there was already a record label called Sad Sack Records or something. But
so you had a list of.
I had a long list. Just like a coffee shop, I'd have a list of coffee shop names. I had a list of record label names. So many of them were taken. But calling something Dude Hugs, when like sometimes a dude hug from like a sweaty dude who's been working all day is the last thing anyone wants. Right. And that's kind of what I was talking about. It's like, I'm going to give people the last thing they want. My music.
Yeah. Listen, the next time we hang out, I want to open up a coffee shop and call it Thanks a Latte. I mean, I love.
Yeah. But then you'll find out there's 75 of them.
Exactly. Yeah.
They're like, oh well.
So, but I love that, and it's really funny because I remember even Brian Kinchlow and I were working in the beginning of the pandemic, and it was still so new that we weren't even seeing each other. We were working like this virtually, sending each other music ideas and talking and saying, man, I can't wait to see you in person and actually give you a hug. And he goes, man, I just thought of the best name of a Melvin song. And I go, what? He goes, it's a hard time for a hugger.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, well, during the pandemic, it certainly was, you know.
Yeah, I was like, why is everyone being so distant?
Exactly. But the thing is, I guess I want to give a shout out to Charlie Thompson. I didn't know you guys knew each other. Hi, Charlie.
Yeah, Charlie was in a relationship with my my Aunt Christine after she was no longer married to my Uncle Dennis. And so my cousin Leila's mom was in a relationship with Charlie for years, and we both lived out in the country in Athens, Georgia. We were just a couple properties over from each other, way out in the country.
I love it. Well, I was just saying at the beginning of this, beginning of the episode, and sorry, we were running a few minutes behind. We were having some technical difficulties. But you know, we are going to really try to talk about it every episode in September, and just bring it to people's, you know, their consciousness, and talk about it being Suicide Prevention Month, you know, and it's good, it's healthy for us to just bring it up. And then I said, Renee and I started talking during the pandemic, and she's the wonderful lady behind the scenes producing and directing this episode. Shout out Renee Jaworski. But we said it's community and it's family, and Charlie Thompson has become my brother, so I love it.
Nice. Well, I mean, the idea behind the whole Dude Hugs thing was family, because in the course of working with all these musicians in my career, if you meet enough people, like I'm sure you do, Tom, once you've met like 10,000 people, 20,000 people that you actually really care about, and then 20 years pass, you're going to start going to some funerals. It's just going to start happening, man. And that's what started happening with me, is a bunch of people that I started working with started popping off. And so mortality was a big influence. Yeah. And I just wanted to, basically all the people that I would shoot the shit with, I'm sorry if I'm just not supposed to curse in this podcast.
No, feel free. You can
anyway, any people that I would talk to, and we'd say, oh, we're going to make music. I stopped taking that for granted, that we were going to get around to it, and that 5 years from now, that everything will be forgiven and we're just going to make another record. I was just like, no, I'm calling up everybody that I bullshit with about we're going to make music, and I'm going to schedule them, and I'm going to assign them to this music, and we're going to make something. We're going to do it now. And we worked on it for a long time. But then it became, once I had like achieved my little bucket list, I had not just these recordings of all these songs we made, but all these musicians that I wanted to talk about and to draw attention to and to tell their stories, because I thought that became the coolest thing about my songs. Wasn't that I'd written them or something. It was that I got these people to come work with me, and I wanted to tell you who they were. People like Shane Patrick, you know, or whatever.
Yeah, you know, I wanted to let our listeners and our viewers even know a little about that. When I was on your podcast, you interviewed me. You asked me to talk about someone who I knew that was, like, say, a local musician, you know, who was missed, who had passed away. And I mentioned Rick Dang, who was a wonderful Atlanta musician and amazing songs. And then you interviewed Daniel Gay when he was recording in the studio with you from Boston. And he mentioned someone that he knew that he loved their music and they had an effect on him. It really is such a lovely idea, and like this testament of one, you're letting people know when someone affected your life, you know, and then two, before anything does happen, which by the way, yes, you and I need to, I know we're working together on Daniel Gay's album, which I'm super excited about, but you and I need to do a song together.
No, that's going to be super awesome. Can't wait for that. I've actually been thinking about a lot of these musicians that have been departed, because that started to become a question I asked every podcast guest on the Group Hugs podcast. Is like, who are your dead? Tell me about your dead. Because it's what I mean by mortality as a motivation is thinking about what's going to happen when I pop off or get hit by a bus or struck by lightning. What happens to my music? Is it going to be on some hard drive that gets sold off on my estate sale and then it gets reformatted and that was it? It's all gone now. Or it gets, say I had vinyls or CDs. What, do they just go to the dump? What happens next? You know, is it going to be one of those band called death situations and someone finds some 45s 20 years later? I don't know. But there's no insurance policy for us in a situation where, like, we know what's going to happen with our music when we die. you know. And so I
Right.
started thinking about all these guys that I know that's the problem too. Like I actually before this interview just today, maybe a couple hours ago, I dropped the Chris Piskin cover that I did.
Oh my
His song
goodness.
"Scoop the Shit Right Out of Your Eyes," which is
He-
it sounds like Interpol or something, but he played with James Hall a lot. He was
oh, I
in
know
with
Chris.
Cool
I knew
Bowls.
Chris very
He was
well.
a nice guy. And
What a sweet
he
one.
and
Yeah.
Jade wanted to be roommates with me. And I ended up not being roommates with them. But for a second, I was going to be roommates with those guys. And then a couple years later, they were both gone.
Both
I
wonderful.
actually made a list, Tom. And
Yeah.
if you don't mind, I actually would like to read some of the names
Oh, please do. Yeah,
off
please
of
do.
this piece of paper I was making today, where basically these are a bunch of people I was thinking about that have passed away recently in this scene. And it's been really bothering me. So I'm just going to read off some names. And,
Oh,
and
please
I'm not
do.
going to
Yeah.
get too off of the cuff. But for me, it's this list of people like Mark Waldrop, Sean Young, Tim Knoll, Jade Lemons, Gordon Thornton, Julian Gray, Ruby Ruinouts, Mike Person, Tom Gray, Dylan Brown, Zeb Millard, Bobby Ubangi, Matt Jones, recently Anand Vyas, our friend Rick Dang, our old buddy Jeff Walsh from the Woggles,
Yeah.
obviously Benjamin Smoke, Ben Lawless passed away.
Mhm.
You know, I think about Josh Fauver, Trevor
Oh, yeah.
Birdsong, Sean Costello, Colonel Bruce. I think about this girl, Katie Willett, that was killed in the park. She had a record on SoundCloud.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Atlanta has seen a lot. Bradley Bailey. You know,
Yeah.
it's just a lot for our little community. But this is what happens if you've known enough people long enough. You're going to start attending some funerals. So that's kind of been my motivation behind making these recordings. And it's been also my motivation for making a lot of these podcast interviews is I wanted to tell the stories of the people that I can, get them to tell their story while they're still here. Because there's a lot of people I'd love to interview, but they're all dead.
They're not here to tell the story anymore, which
And so
is
who's representing them?
wonderful.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful at the end of every interview on your podcast when you ask me or Daniel or someone else and you ask them to mention who influenced them that's no longer here, and that's just you adding to sharing their legacy.
It's interesting when I ask that same question to like 50 or 60 different artists, and then I compile those results. That becomes a heck of a compilation.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I think you're doing such a great service to not only the Atlanta music scene and community, but just the underground and independent music scene in the country because people are listening, and I have fan bases in other cities, because I've lived in so many places and I've toured a good bit this country over the years. And when you do an interesting interview, I share it, and I've had people reach out to me saying, "Oh my goodness, I love what this gentleman Matt is doing." And I also meant to say it more in the beginning. You just also have one of my favorite interviewing / AM radio voices. I love hearing you talk.
I think it's some combination of having to present in corporate environments and being like a call center person. People will mistake me for a computer sometimes. I guess I could narrate, but what it becomes is this thing where you just open your mouth and words start spilling out, and if you keep doing it, it keeps happening. I learned that from Jake Cook. Jake Cook can just open his mouth and it does not stop unless you tell him to, and that's actually a great gift.
Right,
It's a gift to our community.
I absolutely love it. And I also want to give a shout out to Diamond Street Studios, which you have been operating out of, recording and also doing these curating of podcasts and also putting out records on your label.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this has come about as it's like the next iteration in a series of iterations of me recording. And I grew up around a lot of very musical, eccentric people, and I had access to recording technology pretty early in life. But I didn't get to record professionally until maybe 10 years ago or something. And then after the first couple studios that I worked at, I got this opportunity to work with Spencer over at Diamond. And I've been doing that for about 6 years now. And what I really like about Diamond is that Spencer and I are both there for the same reason, where we're there because we want to make the kind of records that we want to make. And so if we're making your record, it's because we want to. Like there's a more mercenary way of living as a recording engineer or producer where we just go after the money and we chase the money and we work on whoever has the money. But I think that Spencer and I have found some way where like we make records we're actually passionate about and we really support these artists. And that's why I've really enjoyed working there. It wasn't just a chance for me to finish my bucket list of self-indulgent original songs, though I did over 200 originals there. I do feel I've done twice that for clients. So I've probably recorded somewhere around 600 songs there in the last 6 years.
Wow.
And that some of them I mixed and mastered. Most of them I mixed and mastered, but I have had a really good working relationship with Spencer, mastering several of my records and a number of my clients' records. So a lot of stuff will happen where I bring in a client or I record them and then I'll mix it and have Spencer master the tracks.
Right. Is that just to have another set of ears who hasn't been there the whole time?
He can tell me if my mix sucks, just like I can tell the artist if their take sucks.
Right.
And that's a problem sometimes with if you're completely DIY, it can lead to insularity where a conversation of disagreements that should occur between two parties. If there's one person doing both roles, that just becomes some stress cortisol, factory inside of themselves and not really the problem being solved. So I think it's really useful to have people push back and say, you suck.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of that honesty and that brotherhood and rapport. Again, like when we were in the studio with Daniel, you'd say, and you just met him, but you also had done an interview with him and had a podcast interview with him, which led us to us even having that wonderful relationship in the studio. And you're like, listen, that's okay, but I know you got a better one in you. Why don't you do 2 more? And then from there, we're saying, wait a minute, I hear other things like shakers and egg salad.
There'll be times when he does the arrangement differently. Like he'll do the arrangement completely naturally, and then I'll record him again doing the arrangement completely naturally, and they're both different. And that's not bad, but it means if we're trying to be super like on our beats and bars, then yeah, it means, but I thought that what he did was so lovely, and it's among my favorite stuff I recorded this summer. I can have what seems like a slow summer for me and still record like 50 songs, but whatever.
Yeah. You constantly fascinate me. The whole one of the ideas of my show. So thank you for being a guest on my show because I love being on your show. Is I never want it to really feel like an interview. I want it to feel like a conversation of old friends. And one of the first things I say to the person I'm talking to is like, oh, I remember I met you at this show. And, or I remember we both were on the same bill to the Earl one night. I opened up for you.
I know you're in a band too, nod that you give to the guy across the bar that you never hang out with or have dinner with or drink a beer with, but that guy's in a band. And you go, oh yeah, I know.
Cool. But the thing is, you've always, I've always known you. And then every time I meet you or see you, a layer of the avocado was taken off and I learned more about you. And
That's what my therapist said.
Yeah, it's always back.
My therapist said I was like an onion. There's just like an alter ego within an alter ego. And, I don't know. I think it's just creativity from my perspective. Yeah. I just put things in different buckets because I'm holding water for people.
But
you know what I mean? And if I'm holding a lot of water for a lot of different people and a lot of different projects, I am invested in a lot of different things at once.
Right.
And I don't want to let any of it spill out on the floor.
Right, but it also goes back. It also goes back to what you said earlier, that the way you grew up. Let's say you you were in the mood for it, doing a bunch of dude hugs, okay? So it takes a while to get to know you. So I'd see you go, hey, how you doing? Next thing you know, like, oh, I'm working the show. Oh, you work in the studio? And then next thing you know, we're talking about negative approach.
Totally.
And we're talking about guys who make really good salads. We're talking about punk rock and noise and jazz and spoken word and what they call outsider art. And then it's literally a hi from the other side of the room to a handshake, and then we're gonna let people know we've actually hugged each other a couple times.
It has happened, and the thing is just like I was really wary about performing and hugging and giving handshakes, going out and going to Lenny's and doing all those Kirkwood Ballers Club and hosting all those open mics and doing all these podcasts, recording sessions and playing thousands of shows and going on all these tours and stuff by now. is a deliberate slap in the face to the part of me in the mirror that wants to just stay home and stay away from people and insulate myself. I had to train myself to not hate it. But I made a
Yeah,
concerted effort to I could just stay home and play video games, but I'm gonna go to Lenny's and play
yeah.
outside art tonight. I'm
And
gonna
that was
do it.
such an important event, the Kirkwood's Ballers Club. You mentioned Ben Lawless, rest in peace. Rest in peace to everyone you mentioned, because they were all beautiful souls and creatures. And I love that you're trying to keep their legacy and their art, their music going. I got off a call a couple of days ago with Ben Lawless's brother, Will Lawless, and he asked me to be part of playing a Stacey Abrams charity event. So I'm super excited about doing that over at the new Hydro. So I love how all of that stuff is still going on. They're still trying to do the Kirkwood's Ballers Club. They're getting that going again. You know? Oh, are you locked? Did we lose you for a minute, Matt? Oh boy. Hello there. Okay. Um, let's see if Matt is going to come back on. We have been having some technical difficulties on the show today. I'm going to continue talking though. Group Hugs and Dude Hugs. It's a record label that Matt runs. He runs it out of his studio called Diamond Street Studios. It's right behind Elmere in Atlanta, right next to the Variety Playhouse. So next to the best Mexican restaurant, best tacos, best margaritas, next to the Variety Playhouse. Wonderful place to see shows. Who have I seen there? Goodness gracious. I saw Anthony and the Johnsons there. That was a wonderful show. And I think 2009, that was unbelievable. But right in the heart of Little 5 Points. But he runs a podcast out of there and his record label. And what he tries to do is collaborate with people and also bring people who have left us too early, bring their art and their music to us. Because they weren't able to complete their journey and get their music and their art out there. So I think in many ways, Matt is doing the Lord's work. I'm a huge fan. We've been in the studio. We're working on Daniel Gay's album. We're going to go back in the studio probably in a month or two to finish up. We need to get Daniel Gay back here. We have one more day. We'll be in the studio working on Daniel Gay's album. 7 songs he knocked out in one afternoon. They were wonderful. And it was just a good rapport and a wonderful vibe. Renee, I guess we may have lost Matt. I'm going to continue saying a couple of things then. One is I will share all of Matt's information, the Dude Hugs and the Group Hugs. So it's his label and his podcast. You need to check it out. It's wonderful. He did an interview with Daniel Gay. It came out a few weeks ago, and it's really wonderful. And I know everyone who watched the show is a big Daniel Gay fan. And so you should listen to it because, one, Matt's got a wonderful radio voice, and two, it's wonderful to hear this story about our friend, and I'm certainly a huge fan, Daniel Gay's background story, growing up in Massachusetts, growing up in New England, and then later on Massachusetts, but how he got into music and what he does and his journey. And again, apologize for the technical difficulties in the beginning, but the suicide prevention number again is 1-800-273-TALK. I'm going to be dealing with MM and Renee and a bunch of folks behind the scenes at Cosmos. I believe September 10th, there's going to be a show all day of artists performing. I think I'm performing in the morning. I might be the first artist performing at 11:30 a.m. I got to check with the MM. I mean, it's either at 11 a.m. or 11:30. I could do whichever times that she wants. And then great artists performing throughout the day and just talking about this because it's very important, because we don't want to lose anybody. And then that evening, I think 8 o'clock that night or 10 o'clock that night, they will have a panel just having an open discussion and open dialogue. I hate that we lost Matt. We'll have him back as a guest because he is wonderful. Maybe we'll do another interview down the road live with just me and him together in person at Diamond Street Studios, and kind of, the whole idea is for the show to grow. So eventually, I know we will do some shows where I'm in person with my guest. I still think every show we do is the best. So I'm loving tonight. Thank you, Renee Jaworski. I want to send much love to everyone. I want to let John Phipps know that I'm thinking about him. My brother, I'm proud of you, thinking of you, here for you, and here for all of you. Charlie Thompson, Matt Geenia, lovely dude. Love all of you, and let's burn it down next week. Cheers, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out.